The gunshot that cracked through the morning air of Rock Springs, Wyoming in 1873 wasn't meant to kill, but to warn. Vivian Ackerman ducked behind the water barrel outside her modest dress shop, her heart pounding against her chest as she listened to the drunken laughter of men stumbling out of the saloon across the dusty street. At 40 years old, she'd seen enough of the world to know when to hide and when to stand her ground, and right now, hiding seemed the wiser choice. "Miss Ackerman, you can come out now," called the familiar voice of Sheriff Tate. "Those fools are sleeping it off in my jail." Vivian straightened her skirts and emerged from her hiding place, brushing dust from her sleeves. Her honey-brown hair, streaked with silver at the temples, was pinned neatly at the nape of her neck, and her green eyes flickered with a mixture of relief and annoyance. "Thank you, Sheriff," she said, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "Though I suspect they'll be back to their foolishness tomorrow." Sheriff Tate adjusted his hat, revealing graying hair and a weathered face. "Probably so, madam. Mining towns got too many men with too much money and not enough sense." He glanced at the dress shop sign that read Ackerman's Fine Apparel. "Business good. Good enough," Vivian replied, though in truth, business had never been better. Rock Springs was growing, and the wives of railroad men and miners needed proper clothing. She'd arrived 3 years ago after her husband's death back east, determined to make her own way rather than remarrying as her family had pressured her to do. At her age, they said, she should be grateful for any offer, but Vivian had other ideas. The sheriff tipped his hat and continued his morning rounds, leaving Vivian to unlock her shop. As she pushed open the door, the bell above it jingled cheerfully, a sharp contrast to the morning's violent start. Inside, bolts of fabric lined the shelves: calicos, silks, and wools imported at great expense. Half-finished dresses hung on forms, waiting for final fittings. Vivian breathed in the familiar scent of cotton and lavender sachet, letting the peace of her domain settle over her. Her assistant, young Sally Pemberton, would arrive soon to help with the day's work. They had 3 wedding dresses to complete before the month's end, a testament to Rock Springs' growth and prosperity. As Vivian lit the lamps, the bell jingled again. "We're not quite open yet," she called, not turning from her task. "I ain't here for a dress, madam," came a deep, unfamiliar voice. Vivian turned to find a tall man filling her doorway, his broad shoulders nearly touching both sides of the frame. He removed his hat, revealing sun-bleached hair the color of wheat and eyes as blue as the Wyoming sky. Dust coated his clothes, marking him as a traveler. "Yancy Holt, madam," he introduced himself with a slight bow. "I'm looking for the owner." Vivian straightened. "I'm Vivian Ackerman. This is my shop." Surprise flickered across his tanned face. "You own this place? Yourself?" "I do," she replied, lifting her chin slightly. "What can I help you with, Mr. Holt?" He stepped fully into the shop, closing the door behind him. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps early 30s, with laugh lines at the corners of his eyes and a small scar bisecting his right eyebrow. "I'm looking for work, madam. I'm handy with tools, and your sign outside is hanging by a thread. Noticed your back steps need mending too." Vivian hesitated. The man was right, repairs were needed, and finding reliable help in Rock Springs wasn't easy. Every able-bodied man seemed to be either working the mines or the railroad. "I can't pay much," she said cautiously. A smile broke across his face, transforming his weathered features into something almost boyish. "Don't need much, madam. Just honest work and maybe a meal now and then." "Where are you from, Mr. Holt?" "Texas originally. Been driving cattle north these past 10 years. Decided it was time for a change." He glanced around the shop. "Never thought I'd end up in a dress shop, but life takes curious turns." There was something genuine in his manner that Vivian found herself responding to despite her usual caution. "Very well, Mr. Holt. You can start with the sign and the steps. We'll see how that goes." "Yes, madam," he said, putting his hat back on. "I'll fetch my tools." As he turned to leave, Vivian called after him, "And Mr. Holt, I don't tolerate drinking during working hours." He looked back, his expression serious. "No, madam. Never touch the stuff. Seen what it does to good men." After he left, Vivian wondered if she'd made a mistake. A drifting cowboy wasn't the most reliable of workers, but there was something solid about Yancy Holt that made her willing to take the chance. By midday, the steady sound of hammering from outside the shop had drawn curious glances from passers-by. Sally arrived, her youthful face bright with curiosity. "Who's the cowboy, Miss Ackerman?" she asked, her eyes wide with interest as she watched Yancy work through the window. "Just someone doing repairs," Vivian replied dismissively, handing the girl a stack of patterns. "We have work to do, Sally. Mrs. Peterson is coming for her fitting at 2 o'clock. The afternoon passed in a flurry of customers and fittings. Vivian nearly forgot about the man outside until the shop door opened and Yancy stood there, hat in hand. "Signs fixed proper now, madam. Steps 2. Noticed your display window has a crack. I can fix that tomorrow if you'd like." Vivian walked outside to inspect his work. The sign hung straight and secure, no longer threatening to fall on unfortunate passers-by. The back steps, which had wobbled alarmingly for months, were now solid. "This is good work, Mr. Holt," she admitted, genuinely impressed. "Thank you, madam." He shifted his weight, seemingly uncomfortable with the praise. "I'll be back tomorrow then, for the window." Yes, that would be fine, and she hesitated. "Would you care to join me for supper, as thanks for your work today? I live above the shop." The invitation surprised them both. Vivian wasn't in the habit of inviting strange men to dine with her, but there was something trustworthy about Yancy Holt, something that put her at ease despite her better judgment. "That's mighty kind, Miss Ackerman. I accept." His smile was warm but respectful. 6 o'clock then," she said, suddenly flustered. "Nothing fancy, mind you." "Yes, madam, 6 o'clock." As he walked away, Vivian couldn't help but notice the curious stares from women passing by. Yancy Holt cut an impressive figure, and she suddenly felt foolish for inviting him to dinner. What would people think? A woman her age entertaining a younger man, she pushed the thought aside. It was a simple thank you meal for work well done, nothing more. That evening, Vivian found herself taking unusual care with her appearance. She changed from her work dress to a blue muslin that brought out the green in her eyes, and she loosened her hair from its severe bun, allowing it to fall in soft waves to her shoulders. Precisely at 6, a knock came at her door. Yancy stood there, freshly shaved, his hair still damp. He'd changed into a clean shirt, and though it was worn at the cuffs, it was neatly pressed. "Evening, Miss Ackerman," he said, and then his eyes widened slightly as he took in her appearance. "You look lovely, if you don't mind my saying so." Vivian felt a blush rise to her cheeks, something that hadn't happened in years. "Thank you, Mr. Holt. Please come in." Her living quarters were small but comfortable, a sitting area with 2 armchairs flanking a small stove, a table set for 2, and a kitchenette separated by a curtain. Behind another curtain was her bedroom. The walls were adorned with a few paintings she'd brought from her previous life, and bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes of poetry and novels. "It's not much," she said, suddenly seeing her home through his eyes. "It's real nice," he replied, and she could tell he meant it. "Reminds me of my ma's place back when I was a boy. She loved books, too." Vivian gestured toward the table. "Please sit. I hope you like beef stew." "One of my favorites," he said, taking a seat. Conversation flowed more easily than Vivian had expected. Yancy told her about growing up on a small ranch in Texas, losing his parents to fever when he was 17, and spending the next decade moving from one cattle outfit to another. "What brought you to Rock Springs?" she asked as she served apple cobbler for dessert. He was silent for a moment, seeming to consider his words carefully. "Truth is, Miss Ackerman, I'm looking to settle. Done enough wandering for one lifetime. And you chose Rock Springs." She couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. The town, while growing, was hardly the most appealing place to put down roots. He smiled. "Didn't exactly choose it. My horse came up lame outside of town, and by the time he was healed, I'd found I liked the place. Rough as it is, there's something honest about it." He paused. "What about you? How does a fine lady like yourself end up running a dress shop in Wyoming?" Vivian stiffened slightly. "I'm hardly a fine lady, Mr. Holt." "Beg to differ, madam. You talk like one, carry yourself like one." She sighed, deciding there was no harm in telling him. "I was married to a banker in Boston. When he died, his family discovered he'd gambled away most of our money. What little remained, I used to come west and start over." "That took courage," he said quietly. "It took desperation," she corrected. "My in-laws made it clear I was a burden and my own family." She trailed off, the old pain surfacing. "Well, they thought at my age I should accept any marriage proposal that came my way, regardless of the man offering. And you disagreed." "I had been married to a man I didn't love once." I saw no reason to repeat the experience. She looked down at her hands, suddenly self-conscious. "I'm sorry. I don't usually share so much with strangers," he finished for her. "No need to apologize. Sometimes it's easier to talk to someone who doesn't know all your history." Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment, Vivian felt a connection she hadn't experienced in years, perhaps ever. It unsettled her. "It's getting late," she said, standing abruptly. "Thank you for your company, Mr. Holt." He rose as well, understanding he was being dismissed. "Thank you for the meal, Miss Ackerman. Best I've had in a long while." At the door, he turned back. "I'll be by tomorrow for that window, if that's still all right." "Yes, of course. Good night, Mr. Holt." "Yancy, please," he said. "Mr. Holt was my pa." "Good night, Yancy," she amended, the name feeling strangely intimate on her tongue. "Good night, Miss Ackerman." "Vivian," she found herself saying. "If I'm to call you Yancy, you should call me Vivian." His smile brightened his entire face. "Good night, Vivian." After he left, Vivian stood at the window, watching his tall figure disappear down the darkened street. What was she doing, inviting a drifter to call her by her first name? And yet, there was something about Yancy Holt that made her feel both safe and recklessly alive at the same time. "It's just dinner and conversation," she told herself firmly. "Nothing more." Besides, she was too old for romantic notions. At 40, she'd made her peace with solitude. Hadn't she? The next morning, Vivian woke earlier than usual, taking extra care with her appearance before heading down to the shop. She told herself it was because Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife, was coming in for a fitting, but she knew it wasn't entirely true. The morning passed without any sign of Yancy. By noon, Vivian had convinced herself he wouldn't return. Why would he? The work he'd promised was hardly worth much pay, and he was a drifter by nature. The thought left her with an unexpected hollow feeling. Just as she was closing the shop for her midday meal, the bell jingled, and Yancy walked in, carrying tools and a small pane of glass. "Afternoon, Vivian," he said, his smile warm. "Sorry I'm late, had to track down the right size of glass." Relief flooded through her. "No need to apologize, I wasn't sure you'd return." He looked genuinely confused. "I said I would, didn't I?" "Yes, but—" She didn't finish the thought. "The window's over here." As he worked, Vivian found herself stealing glances at him. His hands were large but surprisingly deft, handling the delicate glass with care. The muscles in his forearms flexed as he worked, and a lock of hair fell over his forehead, which he absently brushed away. "Have you had lunch?" she asked when he was nearly finished. "No, madam," he replied, focused on his task. "I have some bread and cheese upstairs. And please, it's Vivian." He looked up, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Bread and cheese sounds mighty fine, Vivian." Over their simple meal, Yancy told her about his morning. He'd helped the livery stable owner with a difficult horse and had been offered regular work there. "Seems I might be staying in Rock Springs a while," he said, watching her reaction. "That's good news," Vivian replied, trying to sound casual. "The town can use skilled hands. And how about you? Could you use some regular help around here? That roof looks like it might need attention before winter." Vivian considered the offer. Having Yancy around regularly was both appealing and disconcerting. "I suppose I could," she said finally, "when you're not needed at the livery." "It's settled then," he said, a note of satisfaction in his voice. Over the next few weeks a pattern emerged. Yancy would work at the livery stable in the mornings and come to the dress shop in the afternoons. He fixed the roof, built new shelves for Vivian's growing inventory of fabrics, and even constructed a more elegant display case for the front window. Their shared meals became regular occurrences, and Vivian found herself looking forward to their conversations. Yancy was surprisingly well-read for a cowboy, having picked up the habit of reading during long cattle drives. "Not much else to do at night besides stare at the fire or read," he explained when she expressed surprise at his knowledge of Dickens. "Trail boss had a trunk full of books, said it kept us out of trouble." The town began to take notice of the cowboy who spent so much time at Miss Ackerman's shop. Gossip, inevitable in a small community, started to circulate. Some of it reached Vivian's ears through her customers. "That young man seems quite taken with you," Mrs. Henderson remarked during a fitting, her tone suggesting she found the idea rather scandalous. "Mr. Holt works for me," Vivian replied stiffly. "Nothing more." The banker's wife raised an eyebrow. "If you say so, dear, though at your age you might consider yourself fortunate to attract such attention." Vivian's hand stilled on the fabric. "My age has nothing to do with who I employ, Mrs. Henderson." "Of course not," the woman said, her tone making it clear she thought otherwise. "It's just that, well, most women your age are grandmothers by now, not starting romantic entanglements with cowboys barely out of their youth." "There is no romantic entanglement," Vivian said firmly. "And Yancy is hardly barely out of his youth. He's a grown man of 32. "Still a good 8 years your junior," Mrs. Henderson pointed out. "People talk, my dear. I'm only telling you this as a friend." Vivian doubted very much that Mrs. Henderson considered her a friend, but she kept that thought to herself. "I appreciate your concern," she said, her tone making it clear the conversation was over. That evening, when Yancy arrived for supper, Vivian was quieter than usual. The banker's wife's words had struck a nerve, reminding her of painful conversations with her family after her husband's death. "You're too old to be choosy, Vivian," her sister had said when Vivian refused the proposal of a widower 30 years her senior. "No one wants to marry a woman of 40 except out of charity or convenience." "Is something wrong?" Yancy asked, pulling her from her thoughts. "You've hardly touched your food," Vivian sighed. "It's nothing. Just some unpleasant customer interactions today." Yancy studied her face. "Doesn't seem like nothing. Was someone unkind to you?" She hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Mrs. Henderson made some comments about our arrangement, you're working here. Apparently it's causing talk." She couldn't quite meet his eyes. "She implied that at my age I should be more concerned about my reputation." Yancy's expression darkened. Your age, what's that got to do with anything? I'm 40, Yancy. In case you hadn't noticed, that's considerably older than you. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. I had noticed, as a matter of fact. Doesn't seem important to me. Well, it's important to this town, apparently. She stood, gathering their plates though neither had finished eating. Perhaps we should reconsider our working arrangement. Yancy stood as well, taking the plates from her hands and setting them back on the table. Vivian, look at me. Reluctantly, she raised her eyes to his. You care what Mrs. Henderson or anyone else in this town thinks? I have to live here, Yancy. My business depends on the goodwill of people like Mrs. Henderson. That's not what I asked. Do you care what they think about you, about us? There is no us, she said quickly. A flash of something hurt crossed his face. Isn't there? We share meals almost every day, we talk for hours. I know more about you than I've known about anyone in years, and I think you could say the same about me. That's friendship, Yancy. Is it? He stepped closer. Then why does my heart race when you walk into a room? Why do I find myself thinking about you when we're apart? Why do I dream about you at night? Vivian's breath caught. Yancy, don't what? Don't tell you how I feel. Don't admit that I'm falling in love with you. You can't be, she whispered. Why not? Because I'm too old for you. The words burst from her with more force than she intended. I'm 40 years old. In a few years, I'll be an old woman while you're still in your prime. Yancy shook his head, a sad smile playing at his lips. For someone so smart, you can be remarkably foolish, Vivian Ackerman. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. Age means nothing to me. It's the person you are that I'm falling for, your strength, your kindness, your fierce independence. Tears pricked at Vivian's eyes. You say that now, but nothing, he interrupted. I've known what I wanted since the moment I walked into your shop. It just took me a while to realize it was you. Before she could respond, he leaned down and kissed her, a gentle press of lips that nonetheless sent a shock through her entire body. For a moment, she allowed herself to kiss him back, to feel the warmth and tenderness of his touch. Then reality reasserted itself and she pulled away. Yancy, please, this can't happen. Pain flashed across his features. Because of what people might say, or because you don't feel the same, the question hung in the air between them. Vivian couldn't lie to him, not about this. My feelings aren't relevant. The world doesn't work this way. The world, he stepped back, his expression hardening. Or your world, Vivian. Because out here in the real world, people find happiness where they can. They don't let others dictate who they can love. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Do you have feelings for me? She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them to meet his gaze. Yes, she admitted quietly, but feelings aren't enough. They're a start, he said, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. The rest we can figure out together. Yancy. No, listen to me. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. I'm just asking you to give us a chance. To stop letting what other people might think stand in the way of what could be the best thing that's ever happened to either of us. Vivian felt herself wavering. The sincerity in his eyes, the warmth in his voice, it would be so easy to believe him, to let herself fall. I need time, she said finally. This is unexpected. His smile returned, tentative but hopeful. Time I can give you, just don't shut me out, Vivian, please. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. I should go, he said, reaching for his hat. At the door, he turned back. For what it's worth, I think you're the most beautiful woman in Rock Springs, no matter your age. After he left, Vivian sat alone at her table for a long time, her mind a whirl of conflicting emotions. Part of her, a large part, wanted to believe Yancy, to embrace the feelings growing between them. But another part, the part shaped by years of societal expectations and family disappointments, whispered that she was being foolish, that no good could come of a relationship with a man so much younger. Sleep eluded her that night, her thoughts chasing themselves in endless circles. By morning, she was no closer to a decision. The day passed in a blur of customers and fittings. Vivian found herself glancing at the door each time the bell jingled, both hoping for and dreading Yancy's appearance. But he didn't come. By closing time, a knot of worry had formed in her stomach. Had she driven him away with her hesitation? The thought bothered her more than she wanted to admit. As she was locking up, Sheriff Tate approached, his expression grave. "Evening, Miss Ackerman. Got a moment?" "Of course, Sheriff. Is something wrong?" "There was trouble at the saloon earlier. That cowboy of yours got himself involved." Fear clutched at Vivian's heart. "Yancy, is he hurt?" "Nothing serious. Cut on his cheek, some bruises." The sheriff's eyes narrowed slightly. "You care for him, don't you?" Vivian ignored the question. "What happened?" Henderson's son was running his mouth, saying some unkind things about a certain lady in town. Holt took exception. The sheriff's mouth twitched. "Can't say I blame him. Young Henderson's always been a nasty piece of work." "Where is Yancy now?" "Doc Patterson's fixing him up. Told me to fetch you." Without another word, Vivian hurried toward the doctor's office, her mind racing. Yancy had fought for her honor. The thought was both thrilling and mortifying. Dr. Patterson's office was a small building near the edge of town. Inside, she found Yancy sitting on an examination table, a bandage on his cheek and his knuckles raw and swollen. "Yancy," she exclaimed, rushing to his side. "What were you thinking?" He looked up, a rueful smile on his face despite the split lip. "Hello to you too, Vivian. Doctor Patterson." A kindly older man with spectacles perched on his nose cleared his throat. "He'll live, Miss Ackerman, though next time Mr. Holt might consider using words before fists." "There won't be a next time," Vivian said firmly. "Thank you, Doctor." Once they were outside, Vivian turned to Yancy, anger and concern warring within her. "Sheriff Tate told me what happened. You got into a fight over me." Yancy's expression turned serious. "Young Henderson was saying things no gentleman should say about a lady. I couldn't let it stand." "So your solution was to brawl in a saloon like a common thug. That's hardly going to improve the situation, Yancy." "Maybe not," he conceded, "but he'll think twice before speaking ill of you again." Despite herself, Vivian felt a warm glow at his protective instinct. "You're impossible," she said, but there was no heat in her words. "So I've been told." He reached out, taking her hand in his. "Vivian, I meant what I said last night. Every word of it." She looked down at their joined hands, his so much larger than hers, and felt something shift inside her. Life had taught her to be cautious, to protect herself from hurt. But hadn't it also taught her that happiness was rare and precious? Wasn't that worth fighting for, worth risking everything? "I'm still afraid," she admitted softly. "Of what people will say, of being hurt. Of losing you when you realize that the gossips are right, that I'm too old for you." Yancy's fingers tightened around hers. "That will never happen, but I understand your fear. All I'm asking is that you trust me enough to try." Looking up into his earnest blue eyes, Vivian felt the last of her resistance crumbling. "All right," she whispered. "We can try." His face lit up with such joy that Vivian couldn't help but smile in return. "May I walk you home?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, and when he offered his arm, she took it without hesitation. As they walked through the twilight streets of Rock Springs, Vivian was acutely aware of the curious glances they received. But for the first time, she found she didn't care what others thought. The warmth of Yancy's arm beneath her hand, the gentle way he slowed his stride to match hers, these things mattered more than whispered gossip. At her door, Yancy turned to face her. "Will you have dinner with me tomorrow? A proper dinner at the hotel restaurant?" The hotel restaurant was the most public dining establishment in Rock Springs. Eating there together would be a clear statement to the town. "Yes," she said, surprising herself with her certainty. "I'd like that very much." His smile was radiant. "Until tomorrow, then." He bent and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek, mindful of his split lip. "Sweet dreams, Vivian." That night, Vivian slept better than she had in years, a sense of peace settling over her that she hadn't felt since before her husband's death, perhaps ever. The following evening, Vivian dressed with care in her finest gown, a deep burgundy silk that she'd made for herself but rarely had occasion to wear. She arranged her hair in a softer style than her usual severe bun, allowing curls to frame her face. When Yancy arrived to escort her to dinner, his eyes widened at the sight of her. "You are breathtaking," he said simply. Vivian felt herself blush like a young girl. "You clean up rather well yourself," she replied, noting his freshly pressed shirt and the new vest that must have cost him a week's wages. The hotel restaurant was busy when they arrived, and a hush fell over the room as they were shown to their table. Vivian held her head high, refusing to be cowed by the stares and whispers. "Everyone's looking at us," she murmured to Yancy as they sat down. "Let them look," he replied, his voice carrying just enough for nearby tables to hear. "I'm dining with the most beautiful woman in Wyoming." "Why wouldn't they stare?" Vivian laughed, the tension breaking. "You're incorrigible." "Part of my charm," he agreed with a wink. As the evening progressed, Vivian found herself relaxing. The food was excellent, the conversation easy, and Yancy's attentiveness made her feel cherished in a way she'd never experienced before. By the time they finished their dessert, she'd almost forgotten they were the center of town gossip. Almost. As they were preparing to leave, Mrs. Henderson approached their table, her husband trailing reluctantly behind her. "Miss Ackerman," the woman said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "How lovely to see you out and about, and with such youthful company." Yancy stood, his manners impeccable despite the cold greeting. "Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Henderson, pleasure to see you both." The banker nodded stiffly, clearly uncomfortable with his wife's behavior. "I was just saying to Mr. Henderson how refreshing it is to see that some men don't mind being seen with women of a certain age, Mrs. Henderson continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "So charitable." Vivian felt herself flush with humiliation, but before she could respond, Yancy spoke, his voice calm but firm. "There's nothing charitable about spending time with someone you admire and respect, Mrs. Henderson. I consider myself fortunate that Miss Ackerman allows me the privilege of her company." The woman's smile faltered. "Well, I suppose everyone needs companionship, even at any age," Yancy interrupted smoothly. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I promised Miss Ackerman a walk before the evening ends." He offered Vivian his arm, and she took it, grateful for his intervention. As they left the restaurant, she could feel Mrs. Henderson's glare boring into her back. "I'm sorry about that," Yancy said once they were outside. "Some people can't bear to see others happy." "It's all right," Vivian replied, squeezing his arm. "She's not entirely wrong, you know. People will always see our age difference." Yancy stopped walking and turned to face her. "Let me tell you something, Vivian. My father was 15 years older than my mother. They had the happiest marriage I've ever seen. When he died, she told me the only thing she regretted was that they hadn't met sooner, that they'd had too little time together, not too much." "That's different," Vivian protested. "When the man is older, it's only different because society says it is," he interrupted. "And out here in the West, society's rules matter a whole lot less than they do back east. What matters is finding someone who makes your life better just by being in it." He took her hands in his. "You make my life better, Vivian. Every day, under the star-filled Wyoming sky, with Yancy's earnest eyes gazing down at her, Vivian felt the last of her doubts melting away. "You make mine better too," she admitted softly. He leaned down and kissed her then, a gentle, reverent kiss that spoke of promise and possibility. When they parted, Vivian felt as though something fundamental had shifted within her, as though she'd finally come home after a long journey. "Walk with me a little longer?" Yancy asked. "Yes," she replied. "I'd like that." They strolled through the quiet streets, talking of small things and large, planning for tomorrow and dreaming of the future. By the time they reached Vivian's door, she knew with certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Vivian's life. Yancy continued to work at the livery stable and make improvements to her shop, but now their relationship was openly acknowledged. They dined together often, attended church together on Sundays, and spent quiet evenings reading aloud to each other from Vivian's collection of books. Not everyone in Rock Springs approved, of course. There were still whispers and disapproving glances, particularly from some of the older women in town. But for every Mrs. Henderson, there seemed to be someone like Sally Pemberton, who declared it terribly romantic and sighed dreamily whenever Yancy came to the shop. Even Sheriff Tate, not a man given to sentimentality, remarked to Vivian one day, "Never seen Holt so settled and content. You're good for him." The first real test of their relationship came in late autumn, when Vivian received a letter from her sister in Boston. Their mother was ill, the letter said, and asking for Vivian. It wasn't clear how serious the illness was, but the implication was that Vivian should return east as soon as possible. "I have to go," she told Yancy that evening as they sat by the stove in her apartment. "She's my mother, despite our differences." "Of course you do," he agreed without hesitation. "When will you leave?" "The next train east leaves tomorrow morning," she hesitated. "I don't know how long I'll be gone." Yancy nodded, his expression thoughtful. "What about the shop?" "Sally can manage the basic work. I've taught her enough. But the new orders and fittings will have to wait until I return." "If I return," she didn't say, but the words hung in the air between them. If her mother was truly gravely ill, Vivian's family would pressure her to stay in Boston, to resume her place in their society. Yancy seemed to read her thoughts. "You will come back, won't you?" Vivian met his gaze steadily. "I want to. This is my home now, but family obligations." She trailed off, unable to articulate the complex web of duty and expectation that bound her to her Eastern roots. "I understand family obligations," Yancy said quietly, "but remember, you have people who need you here too." The following morning, Yancy accompanied Vivian to the train station. The platform was crowded with miners heading east for the winter, and Vivian felt a pang of anxiety at the thought of the long journey ahead. "I'll write as soon as I arrive," she promised as the train's whistle sounded. Yancy nodded, his expression serious. "Vivian, before you go, there's something I need to say." "Yes, I love you." The words were simple, direct, spoken without hesitation or qualification. "I've loved you since that first night we had dinner together, maybe even before. And no matter what happens in Boston, no matter what your family says or does, that won't change." Tears welled in Vivian's eyes. "Yancy, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know to take that with you." He leaned down and kissed her, not caring who might be watching. "Come back to me, Vivian, please." "I will," she whispered against his lips. "I promise." The train journey to Boston was long and uncomfortable, giving Vivian ample time to think. Yancy's declaration of love echoed in her mind, warming her heart even as she worried about what awaited her in Boston. When she finally arrived at the family home in Beacon Hill, She found her mother bedridden but hardly at death's door. Vivian Ackerman was a formidable woman even in illness, her sharp eyes taking in Vivian's appearance with critical assessment. "You look well," her mother said after they had exchanged greetings. "The western air must agree with you." "It does," Vivian replied, taking a seat beside the bed. "I've built a good life there, Mother, so your sister tells me. A dress shop of all things." The disapproval in her voice was clear. "A successful dress shop," Vivian corrected gently. "I support myself comfortably," her mother sniffed. "A woman of your background should not need to support herself at all. It's unseemly." Vivian bit back a sharp reply. This was an old argument when she had no desire to revisit. "How are you feeling, Mother? Your letter made it sound quite serious." A flicker of something guilt passed across the older woman's face. "Oh, these old hearts are unpredictable things. The doctor says I must rest, but I shall recover." She patted Vivian's hand. "Now that you're here, we can discuss your return to Boston permanently." "Mother, I'm not staying in Boston. My life is in Rock Springs now." "Nonsense. What could possibly hold you to such a place? Your sister mentioned a man, some sort of cowboy. Surely you can't be serious about someone so beneath your station." Vivian felt a flash of anger. "Yancy is a good man, kind and honest. He loves me, and She stopped, the realization hitting her with sudden clarity. "I love him too." It was the first time she'd said the words aloud, and they felt right, true in a way few things in her life had ever been. Her mother's expression hardened. "Don't be ridiculous, Vivian. You're 40 years old. Too old to be starting romantic entanglements, especially with a man so much younger. What could he possibly want from you but your money?" "I have very little money, as you well know," Vivian replied, keeping her voice level with effort. "And Yancy has never asked for anything from me but my affection. Men like that are always after something. If not money, then other things." Her mother's implication was clear, and Vivian felt her cheeks burn with indignation. "That's enough, Mother. I didn't come here to have my life choices criticized. I came because I was told you were gravely ill and asking for me." Vivian had the grace to look momentarily abashed. "Perhaps your sister exaggerated somewhat, but is it so wrong for a mother to want to see her daughter? To hope that she might finally come to her senses and return to where she belongs?" Vivian sighed, her anger fading. Her mother was a product of her time and place, unable to understand the freedom Vivian had found in the West. "I'm glad you're not as ill as I feared. But my place is in Rock Springs now, with the life I've built and the people I care for." For the next week, Vivian divided her time between her mother's bedside and catching up with her sister and other family members. The pressure to stay in Boston was constant, but subtle mentions of eligible widowers, reminders of the cultural advantages of city life, hints about the harshness of Wyoming winters. Through it all, Vivian held firm to her decision to return west. Each day, she wrote to Yancy, pouring out her thoughts and feelings, finding strength in articulating what he meant to her. When his first letter arrived in return, she read it in the privacy of her old bedroom, smiling at his descriptions of the town's happenings and the amusing mishaps at the livery stable. At the end of the letter, he wrote, "The shop is doing well. Sally is handling the customers admirably, though she says none of them are as particular about their hems as you are. The new display case catches the morning light just right, you'll see when you return. I miss you more than I can say, Vivian. The town is quieter without your laughter, and my days are emptier without your smile. Come home soon." Home. Rock Springs was home now, in a way Boston had never been. On her 10th day in Boston, Vivian announced her intention to leave on the morning train. "But you've barely been here," her sister protested over breakfast. And Mother was hoping you'd attend the Whitcombs' dinner party on Friday. Charles Whitcomb will be there. You remember him, surely. His wife passed last spring, and he's been asking about you. I'm sorry, Margaret, but I've already purchased my ticket, Vivian replied, buttering a piece of toast with deliberate care. And I have no interest in Charles Whitcomb or any other widower you might have in mind. Her sister's expression turned serious. Is it really so terrible here, Vivian, that you'd rather live in some rough mining town with a man half your age than return to civilization? Yancy is 32, hardly half my age, Vivian corrected. And yes, I'd rather be with him in Rock Springs than anywhere else on Earth. Because there, I'm valued for who I am, not measured by who I might marry or how well I conform to society's expectations. Margaret stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. You've changed, Vivian. I've become myself, Vivian replied softly, the person I was always meant to be. The journey back to Wyoming seemed twice as long as the journey east, but Vivian's heart grew lighter with each mile. When the train finally pulled into Rock Springs Station on a crisp December afternoon, she scanned the platform eagerly. And there he was, Yancy, standing tall among the crowd, his face breaking into a radiant smile when he spotted her. Vivian didn't wait for the porter to help her down. She hurried from the train and straight into Yancy's waiting arms. He lifted her off her feet in a joyful embrace, not caring who might be watching. You came back, he murmured into her hair. Of course I did, she replied, drawing back just enough to look into his eyes. I promised I would. And how is your mother? Recovering nicely from an illness that was largely exaggerated to lure me back to Boston. She smiled wryly. They tried very hard to convince me to stay. But they failed, he said, his voice somewhere between a statement and a question. They failed, she confirmed. Because my heart is here now, with you. The joy that bloomed on Yancy's face was like the sun breaking through clouds. Does that mean? Yes, she said, understanding what he was asking. I love you, Yancy Holt. I should have told you before I left, but I was afraid of my feelings, of the future, of what others might think. I'm not afraid anymore. He kissed her then, right there on the platform, a kiss that spoke of homecoming and promise and tomorrow. That evening, as they sat together in Vivian's apartment, sharing a simple meal and the stories of their time apart, Yancy grew uncharacteristically quiet. What is it? Vivian asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. I was going to wait to give us more time, but seeing you step off that train today. He took a deep breath. Vivian Ackerman, will you marry me? He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small, perfect diamond. Vivian's breath caught. Despite the growing certainty of their feelings for each other, she hadn't expected this, not yet. Yancy, are you sure? People will talk. They'll say I'm too old, that you could have any young woman in town. Let them talk. His eyes were steady, certain. Age means nothing to me, Vivian. It's your heart, your spirit that I love. I want to build a life with you, to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to be your husband if you'll have me. Tears filled Vivian's eyes, tears of joy and wonder and overwhelming love. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you, Yancy Holt. His smile was brilliant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It was my mother's, he explained. I've carried it with me since she died, waiting for the right woman to give it to. I never thought I'd find her in a dress shop in Wyoming. Vivian laughed, the sound mingling with her tears. Life takes curious turns, doesn't it? The best kind of turns, he agreed, gathering her into his arms. News of their engagement spread through Rock Springs like wildfire. Reactions were mixed, as they had expected. Sally Pemberton was ecstatic, declaring it the most romantic thing she'd ever heard. Sheriff Tate offered gruff congratulations and a warning to Yancy that he'd better treat Vivian right or answer to me. Dr. Patterson and his wife invited them to dinner to celebrate. Others were less supportive. Mrs. Henderson made a point of leaving the church service early when the engagement was announced the following Sunday. Several of the town's older matrons whispered behind their hands whenever Vivian passed. But the most surprising reaction came from Jeremiah Henderson, the banker himself, who stopped by the dress shop one afternoon when Vivian was alone. "Miss Ackerman," he said, removing his hat as he entered. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all, Mr. Henderson," Vivian replied, setting aside the wedding dress she was altering for a customer. "What can I help you with today?" The banker shifted uncomfortably. "I wanted to offer my congratulations on your engagement, and to apologize for my wife's behavior at the restaurant that night and since. She can be set in her ways." Vivian was momentarily speechless. Of all the people in Rock Springs, Jeremiah Henderson was the last she'd expected to support her relationship with Yancy. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson." "That's very kind of you," he nodded, still looking uncomfortable. "My own sister married a man 12 years her junior back in Pennsylvania. Best decision she ever made. They had 20 happy years together before he passed." A sad smile crossed his face. "Sometimes the heart knows better than society what's right for us." With that surprising revelation, he wished her good day and departed, leaving Vivian to wonder how many others in town might have similar stories hidden behind their proper facades. The wedding was set for the first day of spring, March 21, 1874. It would be a small ceremony in the town church, followed by a celebration at the hotel restaurant. Vivian designed her own dress, a creation of ivory silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. Not white, she was a widow, after all, but elegant and befitting a bride of any age. As the date approached, Vivian received a letter from Boston. Her mother, having heard of the engagement from Margaret, expressed her profound disappointment and declared she would not attend such an unsuitable match. The words stung, but Vivian found they didn't hurt as deeply as they once might have. Her life was here now, with Yancy and the community she'd built around her. The day before the wedding, Vivian was making final adjustments to her dress when the shop door opened. She looked up, expecting Sally or perhaps a last-minute customer, and found herself staring in shock at her sister Margaret. "Margaret, what are you doing here?" Her sister removed her traveling hat, revealing hair as honey brown as Vivian's own, though without the silver streaks. "Did you think I would miss my only sister's wedding?" Vivian rushed forward to embrace her. "But Mother says many things," Margaret interrupted with a smile. "She doesn't always speak for all of us." She drew back, studying Vivian's face. "You look happy, truly happy." "I don't think I've ever seen you glow like this." "I am happy," Vivian confirmed. "Happier than I ever thought possible." Margaret nodded, seeming satisfied. "Then I look forward to meeting this remarkable man who has captured my sensible sister's heart." When Yancy arrived that evening to meet Margaret, Vivian watched with nervous anticipation as her sophisticated Eastern sister sized up her cowboy fiancé. To her relief, they took to each other immediately, Yancy's natural charm and intelligence winning Margaret over within minutes. "I see why you chose him," Margaret whispered to Vivian as Yancy stepped outside to bring in her luggage. "He looks at you as though you're the sunrise after a long, dark night." "That's how he makes me feel," Vivian admitted. "As though my life truly began when he walked into my shop." Margaret squeezed her hand. "Then you're a fortunate woman and he's a fortunate man." The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the Wyoming sky a perfect blue. Sally helped Vivian dress, chattering excitedly as she pinned the small wreath of spring flowers into Vivian's hair, which she wore down for the occasion, the honey brown and silver waves framing her face. "You look like something from a fairy tale, Miss Ackerman," Sally sighed. "Mr. Holt is going to be struck speechless." Vivian smiled at her reflection in the mirror. At 40, she was no young bride, but there was a radiance about her that transcended age, the glow of a woman who knew herself and was deeply, truly loved. Margaret entered, already dressed in the pale blue gown Vivian had made for her. "It's time," she said softly. "Are you ready?" Vivian took a deep breath. "More ready than I've ever been for anything in my life." The church was filled with well-wishers, friends, and customers. The livery stable owner and his family, Dr. Patterson and his wife, Sheriff Tate in his Sunday best. Even the Hendersons were there, the banker nodding in respectful greeting while his wife sat stiffly beside him. When the church doors opened and Vivian entered on Margaret's arm, their father having passed years before, a collective murmur of appreciation rippled through the congregation. But Vivian had eyes only for Yancy, standing tall and proud at the altar, his expression one of wonder and joy as he watched her approach. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. When it came time for their vows, Yancy's voice rang out clear and strong. "I, Yancy Holt, take you, Vivian Ackerman, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love and cherish you all the days of my life, to stand by your side in good times and bad, in sickness and in health. From this day forward, you will never walk alone." When it was her turn, Vivian's voice trembled slightly with emotion, but her words were equally firm. "I, Vivian Ackerman, take you, Yancy Holt, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love and cherish you all the days of my life, to stand by your side in good times and bad, in sickness and in health. From this day forward, you will never walk alone." The minister smiled broadly as he pronounced them husband and wife. "You may kiss the bride," he told Yancy, who needed no second invitation. Their kiss was sweet and tender, a promise sealed before friends and community. When they turned to face the congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Holt, Vivian saw not judgment but celebration in the faces before her even, she was surprised to note, a begrudging smile from Mrs. Henderson. The reception at the hotel was joyous and lively, with music provided by local musicians and food prepared by the hotel's best cook. Yancy and Vivian danced together, lost in each other's eyes as they moved across the floor. "Happy Mrs. Holt," Yancy murmured as he twirled her. "Blissfully," she replied. "And you, Mr. Holt, more than I can say." He pulled her closer. "I'm the envy of every man in Rock Springs, married to the most beautiful, brilliant woman in Wyoming," Vivian laughed. "I think you might be biased." "Accurate," he corrected with a grin. As the evening progressed, Vivian found a moment to speak with Sheriff Tate, who had been watching the proceedings with his usual stoic expression. "Thank you for coming, Sheriff," she said, genuinely touched by his presence. "Wouldn't have missed it," he replied. "Known a lot of men in my time, Miss Mrs. Holt, few as decent as that husband of yours." He nodded toward Yancy, who was chatting animatedly with Dr. Patterson. "He told me once, when some fool was running his mouth about your age difference, that he didn't give a damn about years. Said what mattered was finding someone who made life worth living every day." The sheriff's weathered face softened slightly. "Man's got wisdom beyond his years." Vivian felt her heart swell with love and pride. "Yes, he does." Later that night, as they walked back to what was now their shared home above the dress shop, Vivian and Yancy paused to look up at the star-filled sky. "What are you thinking?" Yancy asked, his arm warm around her waist. "That I never expected this," she admitted. "When I came to Rock Springs, I thought I was at the end of something, my marriage, my youth, my chance for happiness. I never dreamed I was actually at the beginning." Yancy turned her to face him, his expression serious in the moonlight. "Do you know when I first knew I wanted to marry you?" "When?" "That very first day when you told me you owned the shop yourself. You had such pride in your voice, such strength. I thought, there's a woman who knows her own mind. And then when you fed me dinner and told me your story." He traced the line of her cheek with gentle fingers. "I was done for, right then and there." Vivian laughed softly. "And I thought you were just a drifting cowboy looking for work." "I was," he said, "but I found something better. I found home." He kissed her then, under the vast Wyoming sky, and Vivian knew with absolute certainty that she had found her home too, not in a place, but in the arms of this man who saw beyond age and convention to the woman she truly was. In the years that followed, the town of Rock Springs grew and prospered, as did Ackerman's fine apparel, which became Holt and Ackerman's, offering both women's clothing and men's tailoring. Yancy, showing an unexpected talent for business, helped expand the shop and eventually opened a second location in the neighboring town of Green River. The whispers about their age difference faded as Rock Springs witnessed the deep and abiding love between them. Even Mrs. Henderson eventually thawed, especially after Vivian created a stunning gown for her daughter's wedding that was the talk of the territory. 2 years after their marriage, Vivian gave birth to a son, whom they named Thomas, after Yancy's father. At 42, Vivian had thought motherhood was behind her, but life, as Yancy was fond of saying, took curious turns. Thomas was joined 3 years later by a daughter, Eleanor, named in a gesture of reconciliation toward Vivian's mother, who had finally, grudgingly, accepted her daughter's unconventional marriage. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Yancy surprised Vivian with a picnic on the hillside overlooking Rock Springs. As they sat together, watching their children play nearby, Vivian leaned against her husband's strong shoulder. "Any regrets?" she asked softly. Yancy looked down at her, his blue eyes as bright and clear as the day they'd met. "Not a single one," he replied, pulling her close. "Except perhaps that I didn't find you sooner." "We found each other exactly when we were meant to," Vivian said, her heart full to overflowing with gratitude and love. "And that's all that matters." As the sun set over the Wyoming horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Yancy leaned down to kiss his wife, a kiss as sweet and promising as their first. For in the end, what had mattered was not the years between them, but the love that had bridged those years and transformed 2 separate lives into one shared journey, a journey that, like the endless western sky above them, held infinite possibility and boundless joy.